It sounds biblical, but as the world grapples with the COVID pandemic, the continent of Africa is facing another plague, locusts. As Nick Schifrin reports, the small insects pose a serious threat to food security throughout the region.
In East Africa, the air carries two plagues. Locusts, swarms with as many as 50 billion insects. As COVID-19 threatens the people, locusts threaten people's livestock and food.
They are being a menace, eating our grass and even getting into our homes. When we slaughter our livestock, we find locust faces in their stomachs. Without a doubt, they are affecting our health, our animals' health, and the environment.
In February, 8 East African countries experienced an initial swarm, the largest for parts of the region in 70 years. And now a new wave is 20 times larger than the first wave.
There are swarms that it's not uncommon to be, let's say, the size of Manhattan in New York City. So they can be very big. In one day, that swarm can eat the same amount of food as everybody in New York and California combined.
Keith Cressman is the Food and Agriculture Organization's senior locust forecasting officer. He says in a region that is already struggling with food security, more than 33 million people are now food insecure and require assistance.
This region is very, very vulnerable. For the past 3 years, they faced droughts. This year, they faced heavy rains and floods. So already, they're living in a very precarious situation.
Pesticides can fight the locusts, and the FAO is appealing for millions of dollars of aid to deliver more. But border closures because of COVID-19 can slow down deliveries. And locals gathering to combat the locusts, often without success, can spread coronavirus. The UN is instead pushing for the use of biopesticides and remote data collection, and is working with governments to ensure the people who are fighting the locusts can travel despite travel restrictions.
The governments realize, not only COVID-19 is serious, but also locust is serious. So they have given waivers to all of those involved in the locust campaign, and they're considered as essential services.
The outbreak originated in the Arabian Peninsula, where heavy rains in 2018 and 2019 created the insect's ideal breeding ground. Climate change might also be making the problem worse.
There's 8 cyclones in 2019. Usually there's none or one. So, obviously something's going on with the weather. It could be climate change, but whatever it is, if we see this trend continuing, it's going to mean that there's going to be more desert locust upsurges like we're facing this year.
While the world fights the coronavirus, much of East Africa is battling a second threat with no reprieve in sight. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Nick Schifrin.
Сначала появилась сильная резь, жжение, краснота. После выхода из воды несколько дней пелена перед глазами и сильная отечность. Впоследствии сильно упало зрение, то есть стало сложно различать предметы даже на близком расстоянии. Вот, с этой проблемой я обратилась к окулисту, и офтальмолог дал заключение о том, что это химический ожог роговицы.
Hello and welcome. This is Aishwarya Mary George and you're watching It's Tomorrow News. In the first time in history, there is a snowfall in desert area of UAE. Snow was covered on the Jais mountain of Ras Al Khaimah on Sunday. Jebel Jais is located 25 km northeast of the city Ras Al Khaimah. It is situated at a height of 5,700 feet. 20 years ago, hail had fallen, but for the first time, Mountain's peak was covered with snow with thickness of 20 centimeter. Snow covered an area extending over 5 km. And the temperature had dropped down up to -5 degrees Celsius. Temperature in UAE during winter is as low as 12 degrees Celsius and summer can be as hot as 50 degrees Celsius. People just could not believe to see white and fresh snow instead of yellow dry desert. On Friday since afternoon the snow was falling and after that freezing cold climate was experienced. For the rest of the UAE, there was heavy rain coupled with thunder and lightning, and in Sharjah's Al Khan area, it hailed for approximately 20 minutes on Friday night. Heavy rains have caused hundreds of accidents on roads due to unexpected climatic condition. Forecasters said that the region's cold spell would probably end by next week. That's all for now. For more updates, stay tuned with us. It's Tomorrow News. Aishwarya Mary George.
Snowfalls are a rare weather phenomenon in South Africa. But the cold and rain of the past few days have left plenty of snow in some high-lying areas. It's icy cold here in Ceres, and picture postcard beautiful.
This is the best snow we had in the last 10 years. It's a lot, it's low down, it's reachable with a normal vehicle, it's to the tar road. We haven't seen this much snow this low down since 2008, so we're very blessed with all the snow.
For many here, it's come at the right time, in the winter school holiday, bringing much needed water after a few devastatingly dry seasons.
The snow is very beautiful. You don't see it that often, especially here in Cape Town. And I mean, we have much more people, especially now that it's school holidays, so the kids are having fun.
It's just a winter wonderland, and the best of all was bringing the little ones, seeing their faces, experiencing the snow for the first time. This is the first time we have had this much snow since 2008. Because of the awful drought what we had, but now it's over, and I think we are even going to have some more rain as well. This is just the beginning of our dams filling up.
Unfortunately, we had that horrible drought, and then the Lord blessed us with so much snow and so much water, and everything is just overflowing and bringing life back to Cape Town.
Many visitors travelled long distances to catch a glimpse of the snow, and it was clear that young and old were equally in awe of Mother Nature's icy works of art.
Experiencing this is just like the most awesome feeling, and experiencing the spectacular view that we have, and this is like blessings raining down on us. Just seeing how great creation is, and that it always comes through for you.
It's really good to see the snow for my first time, and I'm just happy that it's here.
Locals say they hope to enjoy the spectacular sight of the low-lying snow for the next few days, and the snow-capped mountain peaks for at least the next few weeks. Renee Dalcom, CGTN, in Ceres near Cape Town, South Africa.
At the turn of the 20th century, America's social landscape was changing rapidly. Urbanization, industrialization, and a massive influx of Jewish and Catholic immigrants from Europe. The Klan began a violent campaign to terrorize immigrants and exploit fears that immigrants threatened American values. By the 1920s, Klan membership was over 4 million. During the 1930s and 40s, Klan membership again declined, but the Klan experienced a resurgence during the Civil Rights era. In the 1950s, blacks began to demand an end to the Jim Crow laws in the South that legally supported racial discrimination. Seeing the civil rights movement as a threat to white rule, the Klan went on the attack. Between 1955 and 1965, Klansmen or Klan sympathizers carried out over 200 bombings and murdered 40 civil rights workers. Brutal images of Klan violence turned public opinion against the KKK. By the end of the 1960s, the FBI was successfully infiltrating the Klan, and its leaders were being prosecuted. It seemed the Klan had been defeated. Klan membership declined from nearly 40,000 in 1961 to a low of 1,500 in 1973. But over their long history, the Ku Klux Klan has always managed to rebuild.
In the end, ladies and gentlemen, these homosexuals, race mixers, Jews, they will all be the fertilizer in the land. One power! One power!
At the turn of the 20th century, America's social landscape was changing rapidly. Urbanization, industrialization, and a massive influx of Jewish and Catholic immigrants from Europe. The Klan began a violent campaign to terrorize immigrants and exploit fears that immigrants threatened American values. By the 1920s, Klan membership was over 4 million. During the 1930s and 40s, Klan membership again declined, but the Klan experienced a resurgence during the Civil Rights era. In the 1950s, blacks began to demand an end to the Jim Crow laws in the South that legally supported racial discrimination. Seeing the Civil Rights Movement as a threat to white rule, the Klan went on the attack. Between 1955 and 1965, Klansmen or Klan sympathizers carried out over 200 bombings and murdered 40 civil rights workers. Brutal images of Klan violence turned public opinion against the KKK. By the end of the 1960s, the FBI was successfully infiltrating the Klan, and its leaders were being prosecuted. It seemed the Klan had been defeated. Klan membership declined from nearly 40,000 in 1961 to a low of 1,500 in 1973. But over their long history, the Ku Klux Klan has always managed to rebuild.
In the end, ladies and gentlemen, these homosexuals, race mixers, Jews, they will all be the fertilizer in the land.
Please, just figure something out. I'm not a politician, I don't understand, but people are dying, innocent people are dying, and it's people that are close to me, so.
the day, this isn't an Arab issue. This isn't a black and white issue. This is an issue for people. This is a human rights issue that needs to be solved as soon as possible.
The U.S. should no longer fund Israel. They are funding the murder and massacre of Palestinian families and humans. These are humans, they're families, they're people. We exist. We deserve a right to exist on our land. The occupation!
The message to the U.S. government is to stop funding Israel with $3.8 billion in military aid a year. The message to Israel is that you cannot have a two-state plan and be preaching peace while you have people behind walls and being bombed and murdered and land stolen from them. That is not the way to peace.
To CBS News senior foreign correspondent Elizabeth Palmer in London, where lockdown rules are being met with some resistance.
A crowd of mostly young protesters marched through the centre of London. They're fed up with the restrictions that have shut down businesses and social gatherings in the UK for a month. Prime Minister Boris Johnson.
What we want to avoid is relaxing now too much and taking our foot off the throat of the beast.
But there are early signs of a holiday mood, as many stores and restaurants will be able to reopen at last in a couple of days.
The past few weeks of COVID lockdown measures across Europe have been painful, but the good news is they are working. The infection rate is coming down almost everywhere, and some of the restrictions are being lifted.
Paris's main department store reopened after a month with an ovation for returning customers. Some sectors will remain mothballed. Ski hills, for example, aren't due to open until January, though some Swiss resorts high in the Alps are bucking the trend. There's a winter wonderland in Moscow, too. The traditional ice rink has opened on Red Square, though skaters have to glove up and enter through a so-called disinfection booth. Unlike Europeans, Russians are facing a worsening COVID infection. It has grown 30% in November. Compare that to Australia, where a heat wave has packed the beaches. Regional lockdowns, some of them ultra strict, have paid off. The virus is under control with only 8 cases reported nationally in the last 24 hours.
וכל מה שצריכים בכל העולמות, בכל הדורות, זה רק בשביל אולי מהחתונה הזאת, אולי מהחישוב הזה, יוולד משיח וייחוד לקהל ישראל. אז זה יקרה שמחת החתונה, שבונים חובת ירושלים מהחתונה. יהי רצון, ובייחוד זה, זה נזכה כולנו, לשמחת לתקופה שלמה, השפעות טובות, ניסים ונפלאות, וקדוש ברוך הוא יתעלנו, ותפנו לנו ותפרדנו, ותפנו נבואות ברוך על כן טוב השם.
אמן.
Israeli airstrikes are reducing Gaza to rubble. Israel says a week and a half of this has decimated Hamas's tunnel network. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Hamas's military infrastructure has been set back years. But the infrastructure the people of Gaza depend on is also in ruins. Lines destroyed, electricity only works 1 to 2 hours a day now. In many areas, fresh water is cut off completely. Hamas is still firing rockets toward Israel, but they've slowed down significantly. The Israeli city of Ashkelon, just 5 miles from Gaza, has borne the brunt of the rockets. So much so that at the main hospital, they've moved all the patients underground for safety.
The entire emergency ward here is built like a bunker. To enter it, you have to pass through this giant metal door, which can seal off the entire area.
Under thick, reinforced concrete, the hospital is now crowded and busy. They've treated 350 here wounded from rockets, on top of the normal workload, all now crammed into one small space.
What is it like to be operating in what is effectively a bunker?
Actually, this is the best way to feel like safe during all the bombs. I counted like a few days ago more than 80 alarms. in 24 hours. All the hospitals is in the bunker.
It's so deep down here, you can't hear the air raid sirens above, by design. They don't want patients to be more stressed as they receive treatment and recover. So the children can only hear the clowns keeping their spirits up while the conflict continues overhead.
Israel is defending its military campaign. Netanyahu telling foreign ambassadors today that even the most precise military strikes risk collateral damage. Hoda?
All right, Richard Engel for us there in the region. Richard, thank you.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Find your favorite recipes, celebrity interviews, uplifting.
The Ark was introduced in the Temple of Solomon in the first day of its opening. And as it happened in biblical days, God began to manifest himself extraordinarily. Since then, people came from all over the world to experience this power.
My name is Arnis Fransmanis, and I'm from Rochester, New York.
I'm from Taiwan. Australia.
Liechtenstein.
Australia.
New York. My name is Hanan Zaiderman from Israel.
I'm from Trinidad and Tobago.
And now...
Hello everyone, we are here outside the Temple of Solomon. The Ark of the Covenant will visit 5 continents, and the first continent will be North America, more precisely the United States, Texas.
It's time for Texas to receive the same blessing, the same power, the same experience with the God of the Bible. 5313 Martin Luther King Boulevard, Houston, Texas 77021. For more information, call us at 1-888-691-2291.
For more than 2,000 years, Ethiopians have believed their country holds one of the most sacred relics in all Christianity, the Ark of the Covenant. Here in the city of Aksum, a special church known as the Church of St. Mary of Zion is where the Ark is said to have rested for centuries. Adventurer and historian Bob Cornuke has explored the region extensively.
The Ethiopians believe that the Ark of the Covenant came to Aksum about 800 years ago. And it's in a very special holy church. One man guards it. He's the guardian of the Ark. He's the only one allowed to see it. When he dies, there'll be another guardian. It is entrenched in their culture, and they believe it with all their heart.
Heavy fighting between a regional militia and the Ethiopian army has been raging in this area since November. The city of Aksum has been at the center of the conflict. Tragedy struck last week as Ethiopian Christians gathered in Aksum to celebrate one of the most important holidays in Ethiopian Orthodox Christianity, the annual festival of Timkat.
Timkat is a celebration of the Epiphany with the Orthodox Church in Ethiopia. And it's where they bring out the Talmud, or the tablets, from the Ark of the Covenant, and they parade it around. And it's a very holy event for them, but this year something went horribly wrong.
Up to 1,000 worshippers surrounded the ancient church, said to house the Ark of the Covenant, when Ethiopian troops approached and, according to eyewitnesses, opened fire. More than 700 Ethiopian Christians were said to have been killed, though confirmation of the attack has been difficult because the area is closed to journalists. The fighting has led to a massive wave of refugees fleeing across the nearby border into Sudan. Aid agencies warn mass starvation is a real factor if the world doesn't act soon. Incoming refugees report almost daily massacres by both sides, as well as mass rapes and other human rights abuses. Humanitarian aid organizations on the ground are calling the situation urgent. President Biden's pick for Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, called for U.S. engagement in his recent confirmation hearing.
Ethiopia, I share your deep concerns. We have seen a number of deeply concerning actions taken, including atrocities. We need to see a restoration of communications. We need access for humanitarian assistance in the region. And I worry as well that what started there has the potential to be destabilizing throughout the Horn of Africa.
The Ethiopian government denies the atrocities, and both sides are claiming victory in the conflict. But the UN says there is plenty of blame to go around.
We have received consistent information pointing to violations of international humanitarian law and human rights law by all parties to the conflict. And these include artillery strikes on populated areas, the deliberate targeting of civilians, extrajudicial killings, and widespread looting.
No matter which side actually wins this civil war, the losers will be the people of this region, as more than 1,000 refugees per day flee into makeshift camps across the Sudanese border, just hoping to survive. For CBN News, I'm Chuck Holt.
But you know what, when it's about China-Africa relationship, people want to hear from me. And I will tell you that when I saw this picture, I was pissed off. I'm not going to lie to you, I was pissed off, and I was really sad that why our foreigners keep on exploiting our own people on our own land. This is what I don't get it. Our own land. This is what I don't get it, because something like this will never ever happen in China. Go hold a girl's boobs like this and take a photo in China. The next you see yourself, you'll be killed, or maybe you'll be in prison. Because the law works and the law protects its people, and things like this is not happening in Africa, and this is what I don't get it.
政府办事的效率太低太低，我们就是跟政府谈，这都谈了，在春节左右的时候就开始谈，现在已经半年了，到现在都没有一个明确的答复。刚才说是你们受欧洲国家管理这么长时间，应该是学到了很多先进的管理经验。
哪有多时间？没多时间呢。我们炒那个要那个固定体啊，很吵。 现在是50年了，这集50年那个。
就是50年以前，你不是受他们
50年以前什么都好啊。
是啊，那个先进的影响，这个代代往传下来，越传越文明越发达了，怎么越来越倒退，越落后了？把原有留下的东西根本都没有更加的爱护保护去利用它，反而都遭到毁灭性的重创，都成了这样子的话。只有慢慢经过几代人，就是中国说的那句话：“今人有酒今人醉，明人没酒喝凉水。”就这样子。在这个消费观念上头啊，中国人和他们这个刚果人，他们受比利时这个西方影响绝对不同。他们有钱没钱啊，该消费照消费，那潇洒得很。一发工资那几天特别潇洒。比利时人我没有直接接触到，当然我接触他们这些人，因为他受比利时这个影响，应该是我想也是这样子的。男的也是，你得有钱那几天狂得很着了，过上几天你二老子回来了，再没几天就开始给你借钱了。其实他们喝酒，让他们说喝酒，他喝不了多少，他就喜欢那个，喝酒吧里喝一喝，屁股扭一扭啊，那这扭屁股这真是一绝啊，这确实是一绝啊。身材好看。这样以后，这个一饼就进去了，这个粗的这么长的啊！哎，你们真的不是，我叫你拿一个粗的。尤其他们这个黑人开车这个，他们这个开车这个，你看那个他一起步，那个车轮子在底下打转。他这个路线整个都毁掉了，是吧？是建起来不容易很啊，到处的这个基础设施都很差劲。作为一个国家的公民，你都不了解你国家的情况。
Avec lui quand on parle, tu pourras l'impression comme ça sur chaque maille. Non, sa façon de parler.
你真的是，你很懒。
你要我干什么？
不是我干什么，你都不准备一下，把这盖怎么叠呀，再盖一下。你看我都在做着准备，你这真的是。
Welcome to Tunacheki's Africa True Story. The focus on China-Africa Cooperation Summit held recently in Beijing may have died down, but the impact of the decisions made there have elicited a rigorous debate on China's role in Africa. Chinese officials say their foreign aid to Africa has seen the construction of 6,000 kilometers of railroad and 5,000 kilometers of highway, but all these development marvels have come at a cost to Africa's independence. When a video of a Chinese man using derogatory and racist words towards Kenyans, including the president, surfaced a few months ago, Kenyans went ballistic online.
Yes. Why are you diverting your anger to me?
Really?
Yeah, it's like you are punishing me.
Because you're Kenyan.
So you are punishing me because I'm...
Everyone, every Kenyan, even Anna. Again, this is all the Kenyans.
There was finally proof of the many allegations of the racism experienced by Kenyans in the hands of Chinese employers and supervisors. Countless Kenyans came forward with their stories and experiences of disgusting racist treatments, especially at their workplaces. The Chinese investors that the government let into the country in a bid to create jobs and opportunities for the many unemployed citizens came with a lot more than just jobs. Workers in Nairobi swapped stories of racism and discrimination they have witnessed. One described watching a Chinese manager slap her Kenyan colleague, who was also a woman, for a minor mistake. Other Kenyan workers explained how their office bathrooms were separated by race. One for Chinese employees, the other for Kenyans. Yet another Kenyan worker described how a Chinese manager directed his Kenyan employees to unclog a urinal of cigarette butts, even though only Chinese employees dared to smoke inside. What stood out the most were stories of Kenyan employees at the Chinese-built Standard Gauge Railway, a project that promised countless job opportunities as well as learning experiences to many. At the inauguration of the project, 2 Kenyan women operated the train as the cameras clicked away and everyone clapped in jubilation. The celebration was not to be long-lived. Several things came to light a bit later. Kenyan engineers have been prevented from driving the trains except in front of cameras. In interviews with the New York Times, several current and former locomotive drivers agreed that only Chinese drivers go to operate the train, describing a range of racist behavior. With uniforms on, you won't look like monkeys anymore, Fred Ndubi, 24, recalled his Chinese supervisors saying. 2 other workers with him offered the same account. Richard Ochieng, the Kenyan man who recorded the viral racist video of the Chinese man in an interview with the New York Times, brought to light more issues. The realities of his salesman job did not even slightly match the expectations. The pay was a fraction of what was initially offered and subject to deduction for a long list of infractions. No laughing was one of the injunctions printed in the company's rules. The cases that have come to light recently are just growing branches of a tree long grown. Sometime in 2015, a Chinese restaurant with a controversial policy of barring black Kenyans after 5 p.m. was shut down by Nairobi City Council.
Some of the times when I am serving a client on their table and the order is clear that Africans are not allowed to be in the restaurant past 5, then I'll just have to tell them that you're not allowed in. So they'll ask me, why do you say that? Why didn't you tell us that thing early? What I will do, I'll just try to explain to the customer so that he or she doesn't get that annoyed.
Having only known about racial discrimination from history classes and foreign news, episodes involving discriminatory behavior by the region's growing Chinese workforce have unsettled many Kenyans. Concerns about racism and discrimination are a growing part of the conversation about China's expanding presence in Kenya and will continue to be, especially with the government endeavoring to forge closer ties with the economic giant from the East. Do you know an African story that needs to be heard? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and make sure to subscribe to get the latest African lists, entertainment, pop culture, and news.
Time now for our daily focus report, and we go to the British capital, where the homicide rate has surged. 50% more people were killed in the first 4 months of 2018 than in the same period last year. On average, someone is killed every 3 days in the city. Our reporters Haxi Myers-Belkin and Julien Sauvaget met victims' families and others trying to stop the violence.
In March this year, 36-year-old Julian Joseph was attacked by 2 men on a London bus. He suffered a severe head injury and died 11 days later. His cousin Michelle was by his side.
I put my head on his chest and put my arms around him. Then his heart was like just going fainter and fainter and fainter. He knew that he was loved and he loved his family, and he was a good man. He was a kind, gentle, humble person. And I don't know, I don't even really watch the news anymore. I don't want to hear about how many lives have been taken to violence now.
Over 80 people were murdered in London in the first half of 2018. That's compared to 116 murders in the whole of 2017, excluding victims of terrorism. Most murders in the capital now involve a blade, while many victims and perpetrators are under 18. They're also disproportionately black. Labour MP Sarah Jones is chair of the all-party parliamentary group on knife crime.
In London, it's true that most of the people who we've seen being stabbed are young black men. But in Scotland, most of the people who are the victims of youth violence are young, white men.
For her, it's less a question of race than of poverty and the increasingly pernicious effects of social media.
Social media companies allow anything to be posted online and not enough illegal content is taken down. So you can go and you can see images of actual knives, people being stabbed, people being murdered even on YouTube. And in addition, you have gangs goading each other by putting videos online where they're actively inciting violence.
The UK Children's Commissioner says 70,000 under-25s are now members of a gang network. Ex-gang member Jermaine Lawler set up donation-funded Voice for Youth Against Violence to offer young people an alternative to a life of crime. He met George 5 years ago.
I was in robberies, weed, even selling cocaine. But now I'm out of that. I've got my own business started. Now I've got my own business going. It's called The Service. Window cleaning, car wash, painting. You understand? I do music as well. I'm working on my mixtape.
George may now have found his feet, but he remembers the sense of belonging he felt as part of a gang. He recalls a night his fellow gang member was stabbed trying to protect him.
He had the knife in his hand, and I saw him take the knife out of him, and he was squirting blood to this day, but he survived. That's why he's a warrior. But I've seen that happen for myself. A brother like that took that for me. That's a friend. Understand? That's what happens in gangs. There's people like you can get gangs that are just there to use you and just to fuck you up. Yeah, but then you get gangs that are family.
A family that steps in when real families are broken by poverty, neglect, and addiction.
No one from up city is going to come down and say, look, let me just grab you quickly. You don't need to be there. No, it's going to be someone straight from him in the streets saying, bro, let me look after you. And he can't look after himself, but the love in there, he sees that.
My fondest memory of Ben.
Confronted with London's gang culture, charities are working on prevention. The Ben Kinsella Trust uses an interactive exhibition to teach school children about the consequences of carrying a knife.
Ben was a real, live, living boy who grew up in their neighbourhood, and that helps give you the sense that this is not something that we're making up, this is something that's real.
Children are shown footage of the night Ben was killed.
This is Ben walking away, having been stabbed 11 times in 5 seconds.
Then, after discussing the legal and medical repercussions of knife crime,
OK, so you're the newbie. Welcome to my cell.
A sobering prison cell encounter.
That just gives them a little bit of food for thought about what choices they'll make and where they could end up if they make the wrong choice.
And yet, so many do. In East London, PC Chowdhury is leading a search for weapons in a public park.
There's a bit of intel that a group of males, they have been hiding weapons inside the bushes here, so that it's readily accessible to them instead of having it on them, because when they get stopped and searched, obviously they get arrested, so they normally hide it in the bushes.
Minutes after entering the park, they find a knife with a 10-centimetre long blade. In 8 years, the British government has cut 20,000 police officers, with London set to lose a further 3,000 by 2020. Police numbers are being slashed, even as the knives pile up.
Hello, how are you?
Well, that's it from the newsroom. Please stay tuned to France 24.
new synthetic killer drug known as Flakka is spreading rapidly across the United States and already causing an epidemic of overdose fatalities and acts of violence.
We're talking about Flakka.
Flakka.
The drug is called Flakka.
Some have dubbed it the insanity drug.
And it's everywhere.
It's been described as the scariest drug in the world.
More powerful than heroin or cocaine.
This is a synthetic drug that can alter your state of mind, raising excited delirium, body temperature, and literally losing their mind.
They're all experiencing like superhuman kind of strengths.
Or it takes 6 policemen to hold them down. That's a problem.
Psychotic breakdowns, hallucinations,
aggressive, violent behavior,
cannibalism and self-mutilation,
indiscriminate violence when Flakka takes over.
We are living in the context of the end of the age. We are a nation under judgment. But you think it's bad, wait until you see what really bad is.
We are here driving, and there's a guy that jumped on our hood of our car. It's insane.
Illinois, Ohio, Texas, Kentucky, California, and Florida, especially hard.
Florida is now the epicenter of the outbreak.
There's been many crazy stories of people having unbelievable strength.
Some people would have like superhuman strength. People have taken Flakka, and it's taken 6 police officers to hold them down.
People carrying off their clothes, running around the streets naked.
In Revelation 18, there's a very, very important passage. In that passage, if you read it, you will find very clearly that the kings of the earth and the great merchants of the earth conspire together, and it says they do sorcery, and the word used there is pharmakia, which is the use of drugs to control the activities of the world, and it says through this they deceive the nations of the earth. So in conclusion to this mass invocation of demonic spirits in people, drugs play a key role in opening portals and contacting the spirit world.
What was going on in your body, in your mind? What was happening to you?
I never experienced anything like that before. I felt that I was possessed, and I couldn't try to stop whatever was in me.
You described this as, you said, was it like hell on the inside or the devil? How did you describe it?
It felt so evil. It felt like the most darkest, evilest thing that is imaginable.
Many of them will see dead bodies that aren't dead, whether it be animals or humans. They can actually feel the body, they could see the body. Others are seeing people following them.
There were visuals that we get that were so grotesque. They're like nothing I could ever even think up or nothing I've seen in a movie. It felt very demonic, very evil.
The consumption of substances with psychotropic properties are becoming increasingly significant. The impact is already happening in society with the number of people who are succumbing to the spiritual impacts of drug consumption and other kind of occult activity, and as well as the increase in psychotic violence that's occurring.
I think that we're going to see waves of this that are going to be very, very devastating.
Channel 5.
A man running naked through traffic.
Another armed and hallucinating on a Lake Worth roof.
A mom accused of leaving her child alone by a busy road.
Those have been top stories in recent months, all believed to have in common the newest street drug, Flakka. It's gone from obscurity to a daily problem for police.
Tonight, News Channel 5's Brian Enton with an exclusive look at the West Palm Beach Police Department's fight against Flakka.
911, where's your emergency?
He has this drug on him called Flakka, and that's what has him hallucinating.
The calls are the craziest.
With the Flakka kept me up and keep me up. I walked like 10 miles.
Val Moore has heard in her 27-year career.
They're like really psychotic. They're screaming, they're yelling.
Her eyes is like she's not herself.
And they're coming in more often.
I mean, it's just an increase of calls since January.
They're all experiencing like superhuman kind of strengths.
West Palm Beach police officer Jennifer Favors went from almost never hearing of Flakka.
I actually had a man running naked down Quadro
to getting calls almost every day.
David, I wanted to ask you a question.
She even knows some users by name.
When you tried Flakka,
What happened that's different than trying another drug?
It felt like I was being injected by adrenaline, like steroids, like Supermax.
And when they stop using,
it's like a drop, like you know, a terrible crash.
A crash.
Yeah, it's very easy. It's
cheap and everywhere.
It's like you going to the store buying a 50 cents candy.
A lot of the dealers that we have arrested, they know the effects.
We can't show you this West Palm Beach undercover officer's face.
I do undercover work all throughout the state and for my safety.
But he wants you to know he's on the job.
Paranoia, delusional. They kind of go into a state where they lose control.
Going after the major suppliers who get this dangerous drug.
They know what it does to you and they don't care.
Shipped here from overseas.
They just know there's an easy buck to make at the end of the day.
Easy to sell, easy to buy, easy to use. But not always easy to prove until now.
He's put on gloves because it can give you contamination through your fingers.
New Flakka test kits.
You don't need much of a sample either. Something small enough to give you a reaction.
Street officers will now be able to know instantly if the drug they're seeing,
it's always something extreme.
A lot more of,
or they're trying to jump off the building, they're trying to jump out of a tree,
is truly Flakka.
If you're around somebody high on that, do you feel a danger if they're high on that? You're not going to be around them, right? Yeah.
Cops say the Flakka oftentimes is shipped in from overseas countries like China. They send it right over into West Palm Beach and other parts of Florida where the dealers distribute it. And it's actually a chemical called alpha PVP. It is that very high demand and that very cheap cost that is fueling the fire right here in South Florida. Brian Enton, WPTV News Channel 5.
We're going to do something a little different. We're going to do the Book of Revelation. This is a chart that I painted about, 25 years ago when I was teaching the Book of Revelation. I painted a little bit each week and displayed it as I taught it and worked our way all the way through it over a period of about 6 months, actually, at that time. We won't take that long this time. So you're going to see the Book of Revelation as a whole. You hear a lot of parts of it, but you're going to see it just as God intended for you to. So this is the Book of Revelation. Notice the scroll here, the Book of Revelation, and it ends here. So from here to here is the Book of Revelation. Now we have down here drawings of what is described in the Book of Revelation. Then up here is what's happening as the Bible describes it in heaven in the Book of Revelation. Down here is what's happening in the earth, in hell, in the bottomless pit, and the lake of fire as it's happening. Now it's divided into three basic parts. The Book of Revelation divides itself into three parts. First of all, through chapter 3, you have the 7 churches of Asia mentioned. And then in chapter 4, beginning in verse 1, the rapture takes place. At that point, you have the 7 sealed book is opened. The 7 sealed book is a book that God has in heaven, and here it is when it's completed. So this represents the great body through chapter 20 of the book, up to chapter 20 of the Book of Revelation. So all that is described in the Book of Revelation from chapter 4 to chapter 20 is listed right here, and this is a drawing, a painting of the individual things that take place. Now I have the verse markings, 8:5, 8:7, 8:8, 8:10, where each of those events take place. So this gives you the scriptural references for all of these things. Now, this period of time right here that you see is called the present age. It's the age in which you and I now live. It begins, and I don't know if you can see that, but with the crucifixion, burial, and resurrection of Christ begins this present age, the church age, the age of the Spirit. Some people call it the age of grace, although God's always been gracious. And then inside of that is the church age beginning on the day of Pentecost, going to the rapture. This oval represents the church age. And then underneath it, you see the Jews scattered, and then they're brought back, and the Jews return right here, and that takes place right after the rapture of the church. So we have the dead being raised, raptured up to heaven, where we will be around the throne of God with the 24 elders seated, the 4 living creatures around the throne, the 4 beasts. There'll be the judgment seat of Christ, where we'll be given 1 or more of 5 different crowns. And then there'll be a 7-year period in which we will reside in heaven, and the marriage of the Lamb will take place at the end of those 7 years. Christ comes back with the second coming on a white horse and destroys the nations in a final world war. And at that point, a new age, age of ages, as it's called in the scripture, begins. That is when the kingdom of heaven that John preached actually comes to the earth, and heaven rules the earth for 1,000 years. That's the 1,000-year millennial reign of Christ on the earth. Revelation 20, verse 4. At the end of that 1,000 years, the bottomless pit is opened up. The unsaved dead come up out of it, stand in the great white throne judgment, are judged, and are cast back into the lake of fire, and that's called the second death. Then the earth is destroyed. Peter says the elements melt with a fervent heat. God creates a new heavens, which is this little cube here, called the New Jerusalem, and a new earth. He creates a new heavens and a new earth, and then the New Jerusalem comes down and sits on the earth, where it will abide forever on this new earth. There'll be no more seas on the new earth to accommodate the large number of people that have been saved throughout history, so that each one of us will be able to have, as the Bible says, our own fig tree. We'll all sit under our own fig tree, and the climate will be changed on the earth. This new earth will have a perfect climate all the way around, and it'll be a garden of paradise, and that begins eternity right there. So that's a quick overview of the book of Revelation. Now in part 2, we'll go into it in a little bit more detail. You can get this chart, by the way. It's about that long, from No Greater Joy Ministries. We photographed it, and it's a lot more clearer there than what you'd see it here with the lights reflecting off of the canvas and whatnot. Yes, and there's a book that goes with the chart that just gives you all the verse references and lays it out for you real plain. So that's it. No Greater Joy Ministries. Michael Pearl, glad to see you. Come back again for the next episode.